Jon Jones retired, not after losing, not after getting knocked out, not after being exposed. He retired as the heavyweight champion of the world. And the one fight everyone wanted, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, never happened. If you click this video, you're probably here for one reason. You want to know whether Jon Jones avoided the most dangerous heavyweight in the division, or whether the UFC allowed a legacy exit instead of forcing a risky defense. Because this wasn't just another matchup. It was youth versus history, speed versus experience, momentum versus legacy. Tom Aspinall won the interim belt. He defended it. He stayed active while Jones recovered, negotiated, and chose his options. By every traditional rule of MMA, that should have made him next. Instead, the division stalled. The fight drifted, the narrative shifted, and then came the announcement: retirement. No unification, no resolution, no definitive answer inside the cage. So this video isn't about insults or Twitter debates. It's about incentives. Because once you strip emotion away, the real question becomes much colder. When Jon Jones looked at Tom Aspinall, what did he actually have to gain? And that's where this story gets interesting. To understand why this fight never happened, you have to start with what Tom Aspinall actually did. Not hypotheticals, not fan narratives, just sequence. Aspinall stepped in against Sergey Pavlovich for the interim belt. Short notice, high risk, no warm-up. He knocked him out in just over a minute. That wasn't a controversial win. It wasn't a split decision. It was decisive. And interim belts are supposed to do one thing: force movement. They exist because the division cannot wait, because the undisputed champion is unavailable, because contenders deserve clarity. Aspinall didn't just win it, he defended it. While Jon Jones was recovering from injury, Aspinall stayed active. He didn't demand special treatment. He didn't disappear. He didn't publicly attack the UFC. He kept repeating the same message: I'm ready. That matters, because in every other division, this sequence leads to one outcome: unification. Lightweight, immediate pressure. Welterweight, the interim champion becomes unavoidable. Featherweight, the division accelerates. At heavyweight, it stalled. And that's where the tension started building. Because from a competitive standpoint, Aspinall did everything correctly. He removed doubt, he removed debate, he removed alternatives. The only remaining step was Jones. Now look at it from Jones's perspective. He had just beaten Cyril Gane quickly and cleanly. Then he beat Stipe Miocic, a legacy fight that added narrative weight to his resume. 2 fights, 2 wins, heavyweight champion. His legacy wasn't in question. But fighting Aspinall would change the risk profile completely. Aspinall isn't a fading legend. He isn't a stylistic puzzle with predictable tendencies. He isn't a name built on history. He's speed at heavyweight. He's youth at heavyweight. He's finishing ability without accumulated damage. And that's a very different equation. Because once Aspinall won the interim belt and defended it, the fight stopped being optional in the fans' eyes. It became necessary. But necessary for who? That's where this story stops being emotional and starts becoming strategic. Now shift the lens, because this only makes sense if you look at it from Jon Jones's side. Not emotionally, but strategically. When Jones moved to heavyweight, he wasn't chasing contenders. He was chasing narrative. He submitted Cyril Gane in dominant fashion, fast, clinical, no damage absorbed. That wasn't just a win, it was a statement. Then came Stipe Miocic. On paper, Stipe made perfect sense. Greatest heavyweight of all time, former champion, name recognition, legacy weight. Beating Stipe doesn't just defend a belt, it strengthens a resume. And resume is everything when you're already considered the greatest fighter in MMA history. Now compare that to Aspinall. What does beating Tom Aspinall add? He's dangerous. He's fast. He's well-rounded. He's peaking. But he isn't a legacy name yet. If Jones beats him, the narrative becomes, good, you beat the contender you were supposed to beat. If Jones loses, the narrative becomes, the new era just dethroned the greatest of all time. That's asymmetrical risk, high danger, limited legacy gain. That's the part fans don't like hearing. Because fans frame fights around courage. Fighters frame fights around risk management. At this stage of Jones's career, Every fight isn't about proving skill. It's about protecting position. He had already become champion at heavyweight, added another legend to his resume, reinforced the greatest ever argument. So when the UFC and media started pushing the Aspinall fight harder, the incentive calculation shifted. This wasn't a stylistic debate. It was a value equation. Does this fight increase my historical standing? Or just expose me to the most athletic heavyweight in the division? And that's where the retirement becomes interesting. Because retirement isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's preservation, and sometimes it's understanding that the only thing more powerful than winning is choosing when you stop. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because if that's true, then the division didn't stall by accident. It stalled because the incentives made it rational. Here's where this stops being about one man and starts being about the system. Because Jon Jones didn't build this structure. He understood it. Heavyweight has always operated differently. Fewer contenders, longer recovery cycles, bigger paydays attached to specific names, more emphasis on events than activity. At lightweight or welterweight, if a champion delays, pressure builds immediately. Contenders stack up, narratives force action. At heavyweight, scarcity protects the champion. There aren't 5 equally dangerous, equally marketable replacements waiting in line. There's usually one, and right now, that one was Tom Aspinall. But here's the structural problem. Aspinall didn't have leverage. He had responsibility. He fought when asked. He defended when asked. He stayed active. That keeps the division alive. But it doesn't force the undisputed champion to move. And that's the quiet distortion. Interim belts are supposed to create urgency. Instead, at heavyweight, they create patience. Because the UFC can still promote a champion, still sell an event, still hold narrative control. From a business perspective, the system didn't collapse. It functioned exactly as designed. Jon Jones maximized legacy. The UFC maximized event value. The division absorbed the delay. And the only person truly stuck in the middle was the contender doing everything right. That's why fans feel frustration. It isn't just about ducking. It isn't just about retirement. It's about momentum being neutralized. Aspinall built momentum the traditional way. Performance, activity, finishes. But heavyweight isn't governed purely by momentum. It's governed by value preservation. And once Jones secured his position as heavyweight champion, without damage, without controversy, without decline, the only remaining fight that threatened that image was the one fans wanted most. That doesn't mean fear. It means calculation. And when calculation outweighs competition, the sport feels unfinished. That's what people are reacting to. Not just a missed fight, but a missed resolution, because the division never answered the question. Was Jon Jones still the best heavyweight in the world? Or did the timing protect him from ever having to prove it? And that ambiguity is what keeps this debate alive. Here's the part no one wants to admit. Both things can be true at once. Jon Jones can be the greatest fighter of all time, and the retirement can still feel incomplete. He didn't lose. He didn't get exposed. He didn't get knocked out of the division. He exited on top. From a legacy standpoint, that's powerful. But from a competitive standpoint, it leaves a void. Because heavyweight isn't like other divisions. It doesn't reward volume. It rewards moments. And the moment everyone wanted, the old king versus the rising heavyweight, never arrived. Tom Aspinall didn't get his defining fight. And that matters, because in combat sports, legacy isn't just about who you beat, it's about who you didn't. If Aspinall dominates the division for the next 3 years, this conversation gets louder. If he loses soon, it gets quieter. Time will reshape the narrative either way. But right now, the division feels unresolved. Not broken, not fraudulent, just unfinished. And that's why the debate won't die. Some fans will always believe Jon optimized his career perfectly. Others will always believe the biggest test was avoided. But the real answer sits in the middle. This wasn't about fear. It wasn't about cowardice. It was about asymmetrical risk. At heavyweight, the most dangerous contender often offers the least legacy reward. And when you're already considered the greatest of all time, the calculation changes. Jon Jones didn't have to fight Tom Aspinall to secure his place in history, but the division needed that fight to secure clarity, and clarity is what we never got. If you want MMA explained beyond fan arguments and surface headlines, subscribe to Cage Reality, because sometimes the most important fights in the sport are the ones that never happen.